My husband always said, content is king, everything is content. I thought he meant sunsets and coffee shots. Not my panic attacks, my miscarriages, and our worst fights, sold as crazy wife stories to strangers on the internet. Before I get into it, if you like long Reddit-style stories about toxic relationships, gaslighting, social media drama, and legal revenge, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. We're still pushing for our first 1,000 subscribers, and your support really helps this channel grow and reach more people who love full stories like this. All right, here's how my husband used our marriage as material for his anonymous podcast, and how I used his own episodes to blow up his little empire and walk away. I'm 32F. My now ex-husband, Nate, is 34M. We met in college. Back then, he was the funny guy with a cheap camera, always filming everything. Short skits with friends, mockumentaries, prank videos. This was before TikTok, before everyone was a creator. He used to say, "One day I'll be big. I'll tell stories and people will listen." I believed him, or at least I believed in him. I studied graphic design. He studied communications. After graduation, he bounced around between sales jobs and marketing roles, always complaining that his bosses didn't get his vision. Meanwhile, he kept making stuff on the side, YouTube skits, a blog, then a small podcast with a friend. I was the one steady thing. I paid bills on time, built my portfolio, found a job at a design agency, and later went freelance. I made enough that we could live okay even when his projects didn't bring in money. I wasn't resentful at first. I thought, we're a team. He's the dreamer, I'm the safety net. We got married when I was 27 and he was 29. It was small, sweet, nothing crazy. In our vows, he called me his muse and said he couldn't wait to build stories together. It sounded romantic. I didn't realize he meant that literally. The first couple of years of marriage were pretty normal. Fights about chores, money, in-laws. Good days, bad days. His creative projects stayed small. A podcast here, a YouTube channel there, nothing blew up. We both worked. We both tried. Then the pandemic hit, and everything changed. My clients went remote. His job cut his hours. With more time at home, he doubled down on content. "Everyone's online now," he said. "This is my moment." He launched a new podcast with a friend. It was supposed to be about pop culture and modern masculinity. They talked about movies, dating apps, self-improvement. It wasn't huge, but they got a couple thousand listens an episode. I helped him make the logo. I even designed their cover art for free. At first it was harmless. Then they started doing storytime episodes. "Women love story times," he said. "Especially about relationships. It's like Reddit but audio." I listened to one of the early ones. It was about a girl he dated who ghosted him after 3 months because he was too intense. I knew exactly who he meant. Names were changed, but the details were obvious to anyone who knew him. "Is she okay with you telling that?" I asked. "It's anonymous," he said. "No one knows who she is, relax." I didn't love it, but I let it go. It was his past, not mine. Then one day, I overheard him recording. I was in my office, editing a client's website, when his voice floated down the hallway from his makeshift studio. "And my wife just loses it because I forgot to take the trash out," he was saying, laughing. Like full meltdown tears, telling me I never listen and don't care about her load. Over garbage, man. You can't make this up. I stopped typing. He continued, and I'm standing there thinking, is this about the trash or is this about your childhood? Because I did not sign up to be your therapist. His friend laughed on the recording. "She sounds exhausting," the friend said. "Bro," Nate said, "you have no idea." I stood in the hallway, heart pounding, listening to my husband turn a real argument we'd had. about him never helping, about me drowning in work and house stuff, into a punchline for strangers. When he came out after recording, flushed and happy, I was waiting in the kitchen. "Did you seriously just tell our fight on your podcast?" I asked. He blinked. "What? No," he said. "I told a story inspired by our fight. It's content. It's exaggerated." I stared. "Did you say my wife?" I asked. He shrugged. "They don't know who you are," he said. "It's anonymous. You think anyone cares?" "I care," I said. "Those were my words, my feelings." He rolled his eyes. "God, you're sensitive," he said. "You knew what you were getting into when you married a storyteller." That was the first time I thought I might not have known it all. From then on, I stopped listening to his podcast. It made me feel too exposed, too mocked. Whenever I walked by and heard him recording, a part of me would tense up, scanning my memory. Did we argue this week? Did I cry? Was I about to be turned into content again? I told him I didn't want our private life on the show without my consent. He nodded, said, "Sure, babe, I get it," and then kept doing it. Just small things. Little stories, me being too picky about the dishwasher, me making a big deal about him gaming instead of helping, always framed as my crazy wife being extra. I tried to pick my battles. We were still mostly okay. We laughed, we had date nights. It wasn't all bad, but something in me started to close. Then we had a miscarriage. It was early, around 8 weeks. We hadn't told anyone yet, not even our parents. I took a test, saw the faint line, cried happy tears in the bathroom. We hugged and whispered about names in bed late at night. 2 weeks later, I started bleeding. I won't go into details. If you've been through it, you know. If you haven't, just know it's grief mixed with blame, fear, and a brutal kind of silence because you feel like you don't have the right to mourn something that barely existed. I sat on the bathroom floor, crying, holding a pad that looked like the end of the world. He sat on the edge of the tub, pale. "I'm sorry," I sobbed. "I'm so sorry." He hugged me, said, "It's not your fault." But his eyes were distant. He seemed more uncomfortable than devastated. I told myself everyone grieves differently. We didn't talk about it much after that. It was like a bruise we both avoided touching. I went to one therapy session alone. He said he did see the point. A month later, I overheard him on the phone with his friend. "Yeah, it sucked," he said. "But like it was early, you know. It's not like we lost an actual kid." I went very still. "Actual kid?" We fought about that later. He said he meant medically. I said I didn't care. Life moved on, sort of. We tried again, cautiously. We were halfway through renovating the spare room into an office-nursery hybrid. We hosted friends. We went to weddings, outwardly normal. Then one afternoon, about 6 months later, my friend Jenna sent me a text. "Hey," she wrote, "random question, is this you?" There was a link to Nate's podcast. My stomach dropped. I clicked. It was an episode titled, "When Your Wife Weaponizes Trauma." I felt sick. My hands shook as I hit play. His voice came through my phone, casual, a little smug. "So story time," he said. "My wife had a miscarriage last year. Yeah, it sucked. I was sad, obviously. But she's been using it like a get-out-of-jail-free card ever since. Any time I mess up, it's, 'You don't understand what I went through,' and I'm like, 'I do, I was there.'" I couldn't breathe. He continued, "Like the other night, I went out with the guys, had a few drinks, lost track of time. I come home to this full meltdown about how I left her alone with her grief, or whatever. Bro, it's been months. At some point you gotta stop making everything about your trauma, right?" His friend laughed. "Women will turn any L into a personality," the friend said. They spent 20 minutes dissecting. my wife's victim mentality and trauma as a shield. They speculated about daddy issues and attachment styles. They joked about starting a support group for husbands of sad girls. I heard my own words in there. Phrases I'd said in our bedroom. Crying at 2 a.m., he twisted them just enough to make me sound unreasonable, unstable, pathetic. I could barely see the screen through tears. Jenna texted again. "I'm so sorry," she wrote. "I only clicked because the title sounded familiar. I had no idea he was talking about you like this. I feel sick." I didn't respond. I just sat on the couch, shaking, listening to my husband turn our dead hope into content. When he came home that night, I was waiting. "Why?" I asked when he walked in. My voice was hoarse. He dropped his keys. "Why what?" he said. "Why did you tell thousands of strangers about our miscarriage?" I said. "Why did you call me a victim and say I use it as a weapon?" He went through a whole cycle on his face. Confusion, realization, defensiveness. "You listened to that," he said. "That's your first response," I said. "Not 'I'm sorry,' not 'I messed up,' just 'you listened.'" He sighed. "It's not that deep," he said. "I didn't say your name, I didn't say dates. They don't know it's you." "I know it's me," I said. "Those were my words, my pain. You had no right." He ran a hand through his hair. "I'm just being honest," he said. "Guys go through stuff too. We're allowed to talk about it." "Talk about it with your therapist, not your audience," I snapped. "You don't get to broadcast my grief." We fought for hours. He said I was trying to control his art. I said he was monetizing my trauma. He said I was overreacting like always. I said, maybe I'm reacting exactly enough. By the end, my throat hurt and my eyes were raw. He slept on the couch. I barely slept at all. The next day, I called his podcast co-host's girlfriend, who I knew vaguely. "Have you listened to the show?" I asked. She hesitated. "Sometimes," she said, "it's unfiltered." "Do you know he talks about me?" I asked. "I guessed," she admitted, "but I figured you were okay with it." I laughed bitter. "I'm not," I said, "at all." I went to my therapist. I told her everything. She looked at me and said very calmly, "This isn't just insensitivity. This is exploitation and emotional abuse." Something in me clicked. Up until then, I'd been thinking, he's careless, he doesn't realize. But he did realize. I told him again and again I was uncomfortable. He chose the podcast every time. She suggested a few things. Setting a hard boundary, no mentioning me at all, couples therapy, or, if he refused, thinking seriously about leaving. I went home that night ready to ask for therapy. I was shaking but determined. He beat me to the punch. "I've been thinking," he said over dinner. "The show's growing. We're getting sponsors, paid ads, Patreon. This is becoming real." "That's great," I said cautiously, "but we need to talk about." "That's the thing," he interrupted. "The episodes that do best are the personal ones. The ones about relationships, wives, girlfriends. People love that. So I need you to understand that sometimes our stuff is going to end up in the pod. That's just the deal." I stared. "What deal?" I asked. "The deal of being with a creator," he said. "You're part of my life, so you're part of my content. I can't keep checking with you about every little thing. It kills the authenticity, and authenticity is what sells." I felt cold. "Let me be very clear," I said quietly. "If you talk about my private life, my mental health, our sex life, our grief, anything I would reasonably expect to be between us, I will leave. I am not a character in your show. I am your wife." He leaned back. "You'd really blow up our marriage over a podcast," he said. "That's insane." "You're blowing it up already," I said. "I'm just acknowledging the fire." He refused therapy, said he didn't want some stranger psychoanalyzing him. He promised half-heartedly to tone it down. For a while it seemed like he did. Episodes were more about movies again, topical stuff. He stopped recording at home as much, said he'd do it at his co-host's place. I tried to let myself relax. We went on a weekend trip. We talked about maybe trying for a baby again. I wanted to believe we could fix it. And then I made a mistake. I underestimated how addicted he was to turning everything into content. 6 months later, his show had grown a lot. They had a Patreon now, bonus episodes, Q and as, uncensored story times. He was proud. "We hit 1,500 patrons," he said one night. "That's real money." I smiled weakly. "Congrats," I said. "That's great." Another month passed. I didn't listen. I focused on my work. I read, cooked, went out with friends. I tried to build a life that wasn't orbiting his microphone. Then one of my design clients, a guy I'd worked with for years, made a weird comment on a Zoom call. We were discussing a branding package when he said, "By the way, this might be out of line, but I think I accidentally heard your husband talking about you." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" I asked. He looked uncomfortable. "My roommate is a Patreon supporter of this podcast," he said. He was listening on speaker. They were telling this story about a wife who forbids him from talking about her, but still uses his income and guilts him with a miscarriage every time he tries to set boundaries. "I recognized your husband's voice. He didn't say your name, but it sounded a lot like your situation." I felt dizzy. "What was the title of the episode?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "My wife tried to cancel me." After the call, I went straight to Nate's Patreon page. It was public to see titles, even if you weren't a paying member. There it was, a bonus paywalled episode. "My wife tried to cancel me, she might hear this." The description read, "Talking about when your partner doesn't support your grind and tries to censor your art. This one's spicy." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't want to give him money, but I needed to know what he'd said, what thousands of strangers had paid to hear about me. So I made a new email, used a prepaid card, subscribed for 1 month. Then I pressed play. It was worse than I'd imagined. He reenacted our therapist's words, mocking her voice. He recounted our "I will leave if you talk about me" conversation like it was a joke. He called me controlling, emotionally manipulative, borderline abusive. He said she threatened to destroy my career if I didn't let her control the podcast. That's like saying, "You can't talk about your life unless I approve every sentence." What am I, a child? His co-host said, "Bro, that's emotional blackmail." He laughed. "Exactly," he said, "but she flips it and goes, 'You exploited my trauma.' Like, ma'am, we went through the same thing. You don't own the miscarriage." I felt like my heart was being scraped out. He ended the episode with, "If she ever finds this, I guess I'll be sleeping on the couch for a year. But screw it. At least my patrons get the real story." I sat very still, then I played it again, and again, not because I enjoyed the pain but because I was memorizing it. Then I opened a document and started transcribing. Every word, every insult, every misrepresentation, every time he mentioned the miscarriage, our fights, my therapy, my boundaries. I saved the transcript in 3 places. I took screenshots of the Patreon page, the title, the description, the tier levels, the subscriber count. I downloaded the audio. I backed it up on an external drive. And then I called a lawyer. Not a family lawyer this time, a defamation and privacy attorney. I played him the episode over Zoom. He listened, expression grim. "This is impressive," he said when it ended, "not in a good way." "I never consented to any of this," I said. "He's using details that clearly identify me to people in our real life. My clients have heard it. My friend recognized me. He's talking about my medical history, my mental health, our private conversations. He's making money off it. What can I do? He laid out options. Defamation claim if we could prove reputational harm, invasion of privacy, maybe copyright in terms of my words being used, though that was fuzzier. He said something else too. He may think anonymity protects him, the lawyer said. But the bigger he gets, the more exposed you are. If you're considering leaving, this audio will be very useful in divorce court. It hit me then. I wasn't just angry, I was done. We put together a plan. First, he sent a formal cease and desist letter to the podcast email and the Patreon account, demanding they take down any episodes that discussed me, my medical information, or our private life without consent. We also drafted a letter to Patreon's legal department, outlining the privacy and harassment concerns, attaching transcript excerpts. Then I quietly met with a family lawyer again. We started preparing divorce papers. I didn't tell Nate, not yet. The next week, the cease and desist landed. I was in my office when I heard him shout from the living room, "What the hell is this?" I walked out. He was standing there with his laptop open, face red. "You're suing me," he yelled. "I'm protecting myself," I said calmly. "You crossed every line." "You sent a lawyer after my podcast," he shouted. "You're trying to shut me up." "I asked you repeatedly not to talk about my personal life," I said. "You refused. You mocked me for asking. You shared my private medical trauma for money. You didn't leave me any other option." He paced furious. "You're going to ruin everything I've built," he said. "You're the one who built it on my back," I said. "If your empire collapses because you stop exploiting your wife, maybe it wasn't that solid to begin with." He tried to downplay it. "I'll just ignore it," he said. "They can't make me stop telling my story." "The platform can," I said, "and so can a judge." A few days later, Patreon responded. They didn't nuke his whole account, but they did remove the specific episode and issued a warning about targeted harassment and doxing, noting that identifiable private individuals couldn't be attacked or exposed without consent. He was livid. "You got my episode pulled," he said. "Do you know how much money that one made?" "I don't care," I said. "That money came from my pain." He shouted that I was jealous of his success, that I never supported his dream, that I was using the system to punish him. I didn't argue. I just watched him dig his own grave. The next week, I handed him divorce papers. He stared at them, stunned. "You're serious?" he said. "I was serious when I said to stop," I replied. "You chose your audience over your marriage. Now you can keep them." He tried everything. "Guilt, we've been together 10 years. You're throwing that away over a podcast." Minimizing, "It's just jokes. No one takes it seriously." Gaslighting, "You always knew I'd talk about us. You loved it when I called you my muse." Threats, "If you take half the house, I won't be able to afford my studio. You'll destroy me." I stayed calm. "You already destroyed us," I said. "I'm just signing the paperwork." In the divorce proceedings, my lawyers presented excerpts of his episodes as evidence of emotional abuse, invasion of privacy, and disregard for my well-being. They argued for a larger share of the marital assets based on his misuse of our relationship for profit and the damage to my career from clients hearing those stories. It worked better than I dared hope. His own words made him look cruel, immature, and unstable. The judge was not impressed with lines like, "She doesn't own the miscarriage," or "You're part of my content, that's the deal." In the end, I kept the house. He kept his equipment and what was left of his accounts. I got a respectable settlement, plus a specific clause in the divorce. He was prohibited from discussing me by name or obvious identifying details on any public platform, including but not limited to podcasts, YouTube, blogs, or social media, in a way that could reasonably cause me reputational harm. Violations would result in financial penalties. His lawyer tried to argue freedom of speech. Mine pointed out that free speech doesn't protect you from consequences in civil court when you exploit someone's private life for profit. We finalized it a few months ago. His podcast is still running, last I checked, smaller. He made a vague post about legal issues and haters trying to cancel him. But without the raw, crazy wife content, the numbers dipped. Turns out, his audience was less interested in his movie opinions than in the spectacle of my pain. As for me, I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I still do freelance design. A few clients left when they realized they'd been listening to my life as entertainment, but others stayed. Some even apologized. One wrote, "I had no idea what he was doing to you. If you ever want to redesign my whole website, I'm in." I go to therapy weekly. I'm rebuilding my sense of safety, my trust in my own perceptions. The silence in my house now is healing. There's no microphone waiting to catch my breakdowns. No half-listening husband thinking, "This will make a great episode." I still haven't decided about kids. Part of me is scared to try again. Part of me is relieved I didn't have a child with someone who sees everyone as content. People sometimes ask, "Don't you feel guilty for destroying his career?" No. He wasn't some innocent artist censored by the big bad system. He was a man who thought everything is content, included the moment I sat on the bathroom floor and lost a baby. He was willing to turn my worst days into Patreon perks. He gambled our marriage for engagement. All I did was show the world the receipts he recorded himself. If he wants to tell stories, he can start telling ones where he's the villain. At least that would be honest. Thanks for listening to my story. If you made it this far, don't forget to hit the like button. Tell me in the comments what you would have done when you heard that Patreon episode, and subscribe to the channel. We post long Reddit-style stories about relationships, betrayal, and revenge every day, and your support helps us get to our first 1,000 subscribers.